We have got a loaded docket here today. First things up, we've got the playoffs, and then we've got the most important lottery in team history with two top 6 positions in the lottery odds. And then after that, we've got the final draft preview of what I personally believe might be remembered as one of the best drafts of a generation. You heard me, if not the best draft. I'm very excited to show you. But before that, let's first talk about the playoffs. The play-in teams for the East are Orlando and New York, Chicago with J.R. Holloway, as well as Washington. And then we got Sacramento and OKC, as well as Victor Wembanyama and the San Antonio Spurs in Minnesota. The 1 seed Houston, 2 seed Dallas, 3 seed Portland, 4 seed Seattle Supersonics, or Sonics in this mode. Grizzlies and Pelicans, with the Pacers being the best team in the East. After them, we have the Hornets, the Pistons, the Cavs, and Boston. That top 5 in the East is crazy. Then I think there is a little bit of a drop off there to Brooklyn at 6. So let's get into the playoffs here. Simulating first the play-in, where it would be OKC and San Antonio making it in the West, with New York and Orlando making it in the East. Starting now with the simulation of these games. Let's see if there are any Game 7s we can simcast here. Looks like Boston, the only team to get the sweep over the Cavaliers, who, of course, lost Donovan Mitchell. The Seattle Sonics go down in 5, as do the Oklahoma City Thunder and the New York Knicks, as well as the 1-seeded Pacers falling in 5. Not built for the playoffs, it seems. Still a few series to see if we can get some Game 7s. And we do get one Game 7, Portland versus New Orleans, as Houston and Detroit have moved on to the second round. Let's go ahead and simcast this Game 7. See what's gonna transpire. Win or go home for these teams. Close game here as we are halfway through the 4th. But New Orleans building a bit of a lead. No, it's tied with under 2 minutes to go. And the Pelicans win in a close one. Jamal Murray's 34 was not enough for the Blazers. Zion, 22, 12, and 7 led the way for New Orleans. Sabonis and Murray both drop in 19. I said when I previewed the teams at the beginning of the year that I didn't think Sabonis was a great front court partner for Williamson, but they're in the second round of the playoffs. So joke's on me, I guess. And now here in the second round, we will see how close these series are. Detroit down 3-0 to Charlotte is certainly surprising to me. I think they're the best team in basketball. They do avoid the elimination there. Boston still yet to lose a game here in these playoffs through 2 rounds. Houston moves on, as does Charlotte. Detroit, with their big 4, still cannot quite get all the way. It looks like, oh, they had an injury. Okay. Cade was out in this series, it seems, with a fractured hand. Dang. That kind of explains why they went out in the second round, though. But all 3 of the 4 series here, why won't it let me go down? There we go. Have been 4 or 5 games. I didn't mean to do that. Unless it gets to a Game 7. No Game 7s in the second round. We've got the top 2 seeds in the West, as well as the 2 and 5 seed in the East. Boston really kind of the only team super exceeding expectations, although Orlando making it to the second round, being a playing team, could certainly qualify for that as well. We've got conference finals. What do we see here? Boston and Dallas both take 2-0 leads on the road, and then 3-0 leads after that. Boston has not lost a game in these playoffs. Luka with 40, 13, and 9 rebounds. Wow. 29, 9.5, and 5 with 2 steals for Tatum. Celtics, of course, no strangers to playoff success with this core. We've got a Boston-Dallas finals. The Mavericks handing the Celtics their first 2 losses. Now their first 3 losses of the postseason. Celtics do avoid the sweep. Will it be a gentleman's sweep? It will not. 3-2 now. And from down 3-0, the Celtics are forcing a Game 7 now. They did something very similar in real life just last playoffs with the Heat. Ultimately, though, they would fall in Game 7. Will that be a repeat here today? Let's go ahead and find out. Dallas wins the first quarter by 5 points and then a 6-point lead into the half, and Dallas has just run away with this one. 54, 13, and 11. A 50-point triple-double from Luka in Game 7 of the finals. There's been a lot of talk about Luka being, the face of the NBA after kind of the Stephs and the LeBrons retire. And with this kind of postseason run, you got to think that time is on us. Wins regular season MVP, finals MVP as well. Awesome run here by the Mavericks, and that will end the 2025-2026 NBA season. Now here in the offseason, retirements, we see DeMar DeRozan, Russell Westbrook, a big name. We see guys like Patrick Beverley, Wesley Matthews somehow still playing until this last year. Bojan Bogdanovic, Jordan Clarkson, Robert Covington, of course, a lot of other very notable names, Seth Curry. But there you have it. Thaddeus Young, 18 seasons, although he was not on a team to end this last year. See, it was Ricky Rubio of our team, one of our mentors, is done in terms of staff retirements. We got some, it looks like generated guys, none of the, head coaches or anything. Hall of Fame, Russell Westbrook is the only one. Averaged 21, 7, and 8 in his career, is steal and a half, had an MVP, 9 All-Stars, 2-time All-NBA first team, 5-time second team, 2-time third team, and was all-rookie first team. Great career for Russell Westbrook. I agree that he is a Hall of Fame caliber player. And he gets his jersey retired by the Oklahoma City Thunder, which seems fitting as well. In terms of league meetings, nothing was accepted. I'm not going to force something to be accepted, but if it's really what I'll do here is if something gets accepted by the league, then I'll deem whether or not I think it should go through. But if everything gets rejected, I'm not going to force accept anything. So we'll go into next season without really much change. And now, the moment we've all been waiting for, the draft lottery, of course. I will remind you once again that we have the number 1 odds in the lottery for the 3rd straight year, but no, it is not from our own pick. It is from the Clippers. In a trade in which we sent our starting point guard at the time, Jaden Hardy, to the Thunder, they gave us this 1st round pick for our own 1st round pick next year. But seeing as how this is going to be a top 4 pick, or top 5 guaranteed at least if the lottery luck is awful, I think that's a good trade. And then, of course, our own at 6, 2 top 6 lottery picks. Where will we land? Let's tune in and find out. And here we are at the lottery, with it being, of course, such an important lottery for the squad. I figured we could get the live reaction today, whether we get screwed over, whether we get some lottery luck. I feel like overall the lottery has been kind to us through 2 years. Statistically, even with the number 1 odds, the pick you're most likely to get is 5. Hopefully that doesn't happen to us. I would hate to have no picks in the top 4. I really, really want to get a top 2 pick in this class. So we'll see if that can happen. And let's get into the lottery, of course. Usually don't see a ton of movers here on this, most left column you're seeing right here. The picks outside of the top 10. No surprises thus far. That will remain the same. So all the picks outside of the top 10 in the lottery go to who they were projected to, get into the 3.7%, but the 96.3% wins for Toronto. Clippers at number 9. They have this pick via somebody, and they moved up with it. Good for them, which means our 6th spot is now at 7, which I think 7 is the spot you're most likely to draft if you have the 6 odds, and that's exactly where we go. We do not jump. So one spot went down a spot. Hopefully that number 1 spot can stay where it is. The Lakers jump too. And now we're projected to pick 5. And we do. We picked 5th. The lottery gods were pretty kind to us the first couple of seasons, but this year have come around to bite us as we fall to 5 and 7. Had number 1 and number 6, but we have no top 4 picks. Statistically speaking, we are the team most likely to pick in the top 4 of this draft. Does not happen. Instead, the Sixers win the 2026 NBA lottery. One thing I'll tell you right now is I am looking to trade up in this class. I think we have the ammo to just give like a grand offer to the 76ers or Heat or maybe even Clippers for a top 3 pick, and give Clippers their own pick back in that deal, of course. Willing to trade multiple firsts, willing to package players. I think this is a draft lottery that I wanted to get a top pick in. We don't have our pick next year, so it's time to be aggressive. And we got screwed over by the lottery gods. It's fine. We got lucky the first 2 years. I'm going to put up a little graph that just shows the probability of, like, depending on what your odds are, which pick you're most likely to get. And statistically speaking, with the odds, we got the 2 picks. Like, the place you're most likely to pick at 6 is the 7 spot. The place you're most likely to pick at 1 is that 5 spot. But still, we had a grand total of a 23% chance to get the number 1 overall pick. We had grand total. I mean, if you add this all up, what was our chances of getting a top 4 pick? I'll do the math and I'll tell you just how likely it was for us to have a single top 4 pick in this class. We ended up not getting one. It sucks, but regardless, now we know what we're drafting, and we might not be able to pull off a trade. So now I think where we draft, I have to be ready for a wide assortment of scenarios, because I could trade up, I could not trade up, we could have multiple picks, we could end up just with 1 pick in this draft. There's a bunch of things that could happen, which means I got to be prepared to really be able to draft at a bunch of different spots in this draft, which makes the draft preview a lot more interesting. I think, as I hinted at in the beginning of this episode, that this might just be one of the best draft classes of the generation, if not the best. I think there are a ton of really good players here. And even if we aren't able to trade into the top 2 or 3, I think we have a shot at getting some really franchise-changing talents. Let's hop into that preview now. Now that we know exactly where we're picking in this class, it's time to go position by position and talk about players that I like at each one. And we're going to start here with the point guard position, where the #1 consensus prospect in this draft since really the beginning has been Damian Harvey, the 6'8" point guard out of North Carolina. And if you're wondering why I'm sad that I fell to 5 and 7, it's that there are two really good point guard prospects in this draft. Damian Harvey is one of them. These are guys that really don't have holes to their game. I mean, at 6'8", he combines elite athleticism with 3-level scoring capabilities, with excellent defense and really good handle, with the ability to hit his teammates. I will say, if I have one complaint about Harvey that maybe keeps him from being the absolute perfect prospect, I would say that his tendencies aren't perfect. They're not anything that I think are going to be a major problem for him, I would say, but his dish to open man tendency is projected to be more kind of low 50s. Whereas with a point guard, I like to see that kind of in the 60s at a minimum. So it's not the worst thing. It's not like it's in the 30s or anything that's going to be detrimental to him playing a point guard. But if you're looking for a guy that's going to be setting up teammates all the time and getting a bunch of assists, I don't think Damian Harvey is quite the guy for you. He's more of the, hey, our point guard needs a leader of our next generation, somebody that can come in and shoulder the load, be that high usage guy, heliocentric, kind of like the Luka Doncic, for the Mavs. This is that guy, except, to contrast him with Luka, he projects to be a very good defender because of the athleticism that he combines with that size, as well as the high IQ. This is a guy who's gonna make some team very happy when they select him. Well, not some team. It's gonna be Philadelphia, unless for some reason they pass. I don't see them passing on him, though. They could pass him up for the guy that we're going to talk about next, though, Malachi Pope, who's a very similar prospect. I'd say he's 6'6", still excellent size for the point guard spot for sure. He's maybe going to be a little bit better of a shooter. Our scouts seem kind of split on that. The consensus is that Pope's the better shooter, but our scouts actually think Harvey is. So whoever ends up right on that could play a big difference as to who ends up being the best point guard in this class, as shooting is so important, obviously, in today's NBA. But Malachi Pope, once again, 3-level scorer, really good defender, really good handle, and getting the ball to his teammates. Now, contrasting him to Harvey, he has a dish to open man tendency that right now our scouts are projecting, let me find it real quick, to be at a 76. And so much higher than Damian Harvey. And I think that gets him a point in his favor, obviously. Also has more badges. He has 9 badges compared to Damian Harvey's 5. Both of these guys project to combine, ready to contribute in year 1 with excellent upside. Both guys are obvious #1 choices in the class. I think Damian Harvey just gets a little bit of that edge in terms of he's a little bit bigger, he's a little bit more athletic, and just has a little bit more of like an elite year 1 skill set, I'll say. But in my mind, I think the badges and the tendencies being in Malachi Pope's favor makes it a little bit closer than what it has seemed to be throughout this process. As you see, Damian Harvey is consensus #1, whereas Malachi Pope is definitely not. He's not even consensus #2. Going back here, the guy that's actually consensus #2 is somebody who's very good, Joshua Barry Carroll. I definitely put him at 3rd among these point guards, but I think in many classes he'd be a very worthy point guard 1 in a draft class. Just 6'2", but with a 6'10" wingspan that you're seeing here in these clips that help him get off jump shots in traffic, because he combines that wingspan with a very high release point. So he can get off his jumpers in traffic. He can get steals like you're seeing there in the pass lanes with that wingspan. He can get some nice passing angles and can get some blocks as well. He's not quite as NBA ready as I'd say as Pope and Harvey. He also is a bit older than them as well, which is what I think ultimately separates those two above Carroll. Carroll's also not much of a three-point shooter. You'll see, like you just saw there, that he will take some wide open ones, but he really excels in the mid-range on the pick and roll. Very high volume, high efficiency pick and roll player at Florida in his time. Projects to be similar to that here at the NBA level. But much like we saw, the guy can score, especially inside the arc. That guy can play make. That guy can defend. He's a really good athlete. He's got at least average IQ. This point guard class, we're going to keep going through some more after this. It is insane. It is the best point guard class by a mile that I have ever seen. 6 badges on this player, as well as all NBA upside to boot. This is a guy that becomes a lot more of a possibility for us because of our lack of lottery luck. If we do not trade up, which is something that I'm certainly considering, but I'm not, really married to that idea yet. He's obviously a candidate for our selection because apart from the three-point shot, he really projects to be good right away. We just gotta make sure if we were to select him that he's not taking a ton of threes, but he's getting most of those shots on the inside and in the mid-range. He's gonna be a good defender with that wingspan. I think he's a really good player. He's already 23, which is a bit of concern, and that's what puts him. I also think he has a pretty low dish to open man tendency. We'll put it here. I think it projects to be in the 20s, which is really concerning for me. That's one of the most important tendencies for a point guard. And of course, when you're doing CPU versus CPU like we do with this franchise, tendencies are very important because we're not controlling the players. And when the CPU is controlling the players, ultimately it is their tendencies that control them. And so not going to be a big time assist guy, much more of a score first point guard, but I think he's going to be a very good score first point guard. Now, moving down the list here, there are a couple more point guards that I really wanted to talk about. One here is Brandon Law, coming out of Texas Tech. And many consider Brandon Law to be the best shooter in this class. He's really point guard off of size only, I'd say. He's not much of a playmaker, and he's a terrible defender. But this guy can absolutely shoot the lights out. I think he's going to be a very good point guard prospect for a team that already kind of has their star at another position. Somebody who already is going to do most of the playmaking for your team and have the ball in their hands, because if this guy is an off-ball threat, he's going to be a truly elite one. The problem is when you have that kind of point guard prospect, you want him to be good at defense too, which he is not. Just 6'1" here, 175 pounds, not much to him, but has that elite skill set. And just because he's that elite three-point shooter doesn't mean he can't score inside too. He can do that as well, but for a point guard, you want better than C+ playmaking. You definitely want better than D- defense. He is a good enough athlete, I think, to eventually become a better defender. Just needs the technique. Not very high IQ, which is why he's more of an off-ball player. But A+ potential is something you love. 3 badges, all helping his shooting. So he's going to be a shooter year one. Also has all NBA upside. Just like this says, he can get his shots off without the actions being run for him. Great off-ball player. And doesn't reliably finish, mostly because of his size. I think his abilities are fine, but he'll get his shots blocked for sure. And then another point guard that we have clips for here is Jose Hernandez, who I think now that we're picking 5 and 7, I think is a very realistic option at number 7 for this team. He, stop me if you've heard this before, but can score at all 3 levels. He can play make, he can defend. He's just yet another one of these point guard prospects in what is ultimately, like I've said many times, the best point guard draft I have ever seen. He's not a very, I'd say, aggressive scorer. He's not looking for his shot. He prefers to get his teammates involved, which I like. He's got that high dish to open man tendency. But that being said, that does not mean he can't score. When he does shoot, he's very good at it. He just prefers to kind of play that more, you know, classical point guard role. And I think he's a very realistic option as 7 should we decide not to trade up. And the fact that guys like him are available are some of the reasons that I'm at least considering the idea of not even trying to trade up. You know, 79 dish to open man tendency. Now the overall difference is pretty big. You know, you're talking about 79 or 80 with Harvey and Pope down to 72 with Jose Hernandez. But I mean, 3-level scorer, playmaking, defensive abilities, it's all there. Incredible athlete, 6'2", but nearly 210 pounds. You saw he's got those rocked up muscles on those sleeves, tatted sleeves that he's got. Has been playing professional ball in Argentina for a long time. And so he knows how to play good team winning basketball. And that makes me really like him. He's got that all NBA upside with a starter floor, nice shooting form, tremendous leaping ability, and good at on-ball steals. Not the best finisher in traffic though, but he doesn't take a lot of shots in traffic. He tends to be very patient with his shooting, and prefers, like I said before, to find his open teammates when they're available. And so really like Jose Hernandez. Those are all the point guards that I got clips on, but there are even more point guards that are going to go in this class that are good players. I think Harold Hart is certainly one of them. He has all NBA upside. Just didn't like his skill set for early on in his career for me to really want to draft him myself, but I think somebody else is going to get a very athletic point guard who can score on the inside, who can create a little bit as well, and has the upside to you know, develop the other aspects of his game. That's just one guy. I could go forever in this class. I think Carl Cooper Dyke projects to be a really good offensive point guard prospect. There's just so many good point guards in this class. Moving on to the shooting guard position and really the rest of the positions in this class, there's not nearly as many awesome prospects, but one guy that's definitely going to be in the mix for us in this draft is Kelvin Fletcher out of Tennessee, the number 1 3-and-D prospect at the wing position in this class. And he's not just 3-and-D. He does, as you're seeing here, have some on-ball upside as a pick-and-roll guy as well. And so while he's year 1, he's 3-and-D, I think he can be more than that as his career progresses. Has a ton of upside, but he, alongside Brandon Law, is kind of one of those guys contending for best shooter in this class. As at 6'5", that's solid size for a 2-guard. He's an excellent athlete and tries hard defensively, and that athleticism helps him be a good defender for sure. And Fletcher, I think kind of that 5 to 7 range, kind of that back half of the top 10 is exactly where he's going to go. He could go as early as 3 or 4, but he's certainly on the short list for me as to guys that I'm looking to draft with one of these 5 or 7 picks. Just because what we're looking for on this team is guys who can positively impact both sides of the ball, who have good athleticism, and who have good IQ. He has all of that. The one thing that we've been getting that he doesn't necessarily have is plus positional size. He's more of like an average size for his position, but it's not a problem. It's just not necessarily a point in his favor. He has 2 badges. He has all NBA upside, good playmaker, deadly accurate jump shooter, should be an all-star someday with no real weaknesses. I think a little bit older, but that's because he had to wait for his time at Tennessee. You know, he was behind Sidney Lowry his freshman year, decided the next 2 years to lead that Tennessee team, did a good job of it. And of course, there's always the added bonus of him being the hometown kid, much like we had with Sidney Lowry. We could get, the two big Tennessee prospects coming out in the last few years coming to our hometown is obviously a point in his favor as well. That is the only shooting guard that I actually got clips on. There are other guys that I do like in this class, though. Starting here with Trevor Paul, who is an excellent defender. Can score a bit. That's not going to be something he's excellent at, but at 6'6", projects to just be an awesome defender. Again, has that athleticism and that IQ that I'm really looking for in these prospects that we're getting, as well as that two-way ability. You can do that. You can play on this team. And he's got 4 badges that are going to help him just be even more of a great defender. And doesn't have the upside, though, which is why I think he's more of a late lottery, like late teens kind of pick. This is more of a, if things don't go our way at 5 and 7, we decide to trade back a little bit. I think Trevor Ball could be on the board. Another guy that I like, where is he? Dante Lloyd. Has all-star upside, as you're seeing here. 1 badge. Our scouts are not nearly as high. So on consensus, he's an A+ 3-point shooter. Our scouts just don't agree with anything when it comes to scoring in this class. It is crazy. B+ athlete with B potential, solid IQ, again, athleticism, IQ in solid spots. His problem is he's not a defender at all. So once again, more of kind of somebody that I'd be looking for in the 20s, but I think he could be a really good shooting prospect with good positional size, good IQ and athleticism that we could develop if we end up with a pick in that range. Small forwards. As much as I love to talk about this being the best point guard prospect I've ever seen, it is equally probably the worst small forward class that I have ever seen. I think there are only 2 small forwards on my board in this class. One of them is Kurt Watts, who is a solid 3-level scorer, but a terrible defender. He does have great size at 6'10", 250 pounds, solid athleticism and IQ, which is what puts him on the board, but not the defender that you like. In terms of badges, he only has 1. Does have all-star ceiling. And basically, if you look at his strengths and weaknesses, it's, hey, he's a good scorer, sucks at defense, which you can already kind of glean from his prospect card here. And so, again, our scouts think he's a worse scorer than the consensus does. That seems to be almost everybody in this class, but I think he's at least intriguing because he offers most of what we're looking for, except for the defense. And if you look, C+ is the best defender on the perimeter of all the small forwards in this class. What is this? The only other guy we have on our board is Bryant Sharp, who's a very intriguing guy because while he's not a great scorer or a great defender, he's at least solid at both. But he's very good IQ and playmaking, so he could be kind of like a point forward prospect. I don't know how early I'd take him because he doesn't have necessarily that high of potential. He has got some potential. It says B+ there, but it's only starter here. I don't think he has much boom potential at all. It says could develop into an all-star someday, but then it says the ceiling is starter. So I don't know what to make of that, but he's at least intriguing in the fact that he's not terrible on either side. He's a good playmaker with high IQ and a solid athlete. And so he's more of maybe like a guy in the 20s or maybe a 2nd round pick should we end up getting one of those. Power forward, there are several prospects in this class that I like, and a lot of them we've got clips on, so let's hop into them. Number 1 here is Ernest Augustine out of Michigan. This is a guy that started the draft process, projected to be a top 10, kind of a back half of the top 10 player. He has fallen throughout the class, mostly because he's a little bit raw. I mean, he definitely has oodles of athleticism, one of the better athletes in this class at 6'8", 240 pounds, but just not very refined yet. Kind of a guy who's going to need a lot of developing to do at the NBA. The good news is he has the upside to do it. He has a high potential, and he has some NBA ready skill sets. I mean, he can score a bit at all 3 levels. His jump shot's a little bit ugly. I feel like one of them feel like his base is Draymond Green, as you can tell from his jump shot. It just looks like he's got the backpack strapped on. You can't really see it from the back angle as much, but not the prettiest of jump shots, but really good athleticism. Can score a bit, good post defense and rebounder. Does not have the IQ though, which is a little bit worrying. One badge has that All-NBA upside though, so incredible leaper. He can take guys off the dribble a little bit and has a good NBA body, but he does not have good court vision, so he's not going to be a very good passer, which is a point against him for sure. Next guy at the power forward position is Sebastian Rice out of North Carolina. Of course, played alongside Damian Harvey this year. And here we see him going against Ernest Augustine. And this was at the point when Augustine was projected to be a top 10 player and Rice was projected a borderline first rounder. But I think this matchup is one of the reasons why those guys have really flipped. Now, Augustine's projected to go in the 20s and Sebastian Rice is projected to be a lottery pick. And he's definitely one of those guys that's going to put in a ton of effort, make a lot of the difficult plays defensively. Offensively, he's got a little bit of a slow jump shot, but he has a really high release point, which helps him make some contested shots and even some and-was from three that we're seeing here. And doesn't have much in the way of elite skill sets, but I think he's a pretty solid all-around player, and that could help him develop. Also has a ton of upside. Had a lot of really good flashes at the University of North Carolina this past season. Was the favorite teammate of Damian Harvey on his assists. A lot of his assists went to Sebastian Rice throughout the season. And he's kind of maybe a little bit of a boomer bust. He's got not the highest starting point, but maybe one of the lower overall guys going to be drafted in the lottery. But he does have that great upside that makes it worth it. Shooter for sure is his calling card early. Cannot defend on the perimeter at all, which you don't love. Not much of a playmaker. Can rebound a bit. Our scouts are actually much higher on his scoring this time. But not much of an IQ player, but does have that A potential. No badges for him, which is unfortunate, but that all-NBA upside is there. Can score posted up, score in the mid-range. Could be a superstar with no significant weaknesses. From what I saw, despite the fact that he has 0 badges, I'm still interested in this player quite a bit. I like what I saw in the game that our scouts went and watched him live for sure. Not a perfect prospect by any means. Like to get better playmakers, like to get guys with higher IQ and can defend on the perimeter a little bit unless you're a center. But I think the upside is very intriguing, as well as he does have some ready now skill set in his shooting ability. Third power forward that we got clips on here is Jermaine Bell, and he is another guy kind of similar. All the power forwards in this class are similar in the fact that they're got some offensive abilities, but they're not necessarily refined. They're kind of more long-term projects. Guys that are going to come in the low 70s, but have the potential to really be something. Jermaine Bell, much better of a rebounder than the other two, though, which is funny because he's by far the smallest of the other two at just 6'7", 208 pounds. Much more of like a small forward size, but his tenacity on the boards and his lack of perimeter defense is what really makes him a power forward. But yeah, that limited size does not hurt him on the boards at all. He has great, instincts and technique when it comes to rebounding. He can score a bit at all 3 levels. Not a great player by any means when it comes to scoring or really offense in general, but I think he has the upside to at least develop into something offensively. And it's really his interior defense and his rebounding that's going to be what puts him on the court early in his career. Another guy, all these power forwards that we like do not have the IQ that we're looking for, do not defend on the perimeter, do not play make very well, but that's fine. As much as I look for those in prospect, doesn't mean every player on our team needs to have them. And another guy, no badges, but the All-NBA upside. There are 3 power forwards with very similar skill sets, very similar starting points, kind of these low 70s, but have the upside. I'd be very happy to get any 3 of these players if we could. I think getting a power forward in this class would be very likely if we end up not trading up. I don't think we can trade up into the top 2 for one of the point guards we talked about earlier, and also get one of these 3 power forwards that I really like. But I think, we have contracts of guys like Zaire Williams and Jalen Johnson. We also have a couple of first-round picks that we have from other teams in the future that we could trade to get back into this class. And I think it could be worth it if one of these guys has fallen into the 20s. Absolutely willing to pick them up. Jermaine Bell is one of the biggest risers in this class. Was a 2nd rounder to start the year. He's now a consensus top 10 ranked player. Sebastian Rice, more of like a late lottery guy, while Ernest Augustine is, at least from these rankings, the guy most likely to be available in the 20s, because that's kind of where he's ranked. And so wouldn't mind trading up for him with one of our contracts or one of our future picks. Other guys that I kind of like, I don't have him scouted very much at all, but I like Warren Dixon a decent bit just from his skill set. Good mid-range shooter and good interior defender with a solid 3-point shot. Solid IQ. It's better than the other guys we've talked about today. Not much of an athlete though. Don't know much about him. He's projected to be, if we go on overall, he's projected to be like either a 73 or a 72. So decent starting point, not great. But again, we have no idea what his upside is because we haven't scouted him enough. Last position here for the draft preview, it's gonna be center, and we're starting with somebody who is a bona fide top 5 player in this class, and that's Francis Mullins out of Duke. Played with Malachi Pope this year, and this duo was tough to stop all the way to a Duke national championship. This pick and roll was unstoppable all year long. Francis Mullins, much more of the kind of modern big, with him being not, the 260-pound paint beast, but much more of an agile guy who can hit some perimeter shots a bit, who can handle a bit, pass a bit as well. But make no mistake, just because he's a little bit more agile and slim, still can be that guy that gets those tough shots in the paint on the offensive end and who can protect the paint and grab the boards on the other. He's just a very versatile center, which is what makes him somebody that I like so much. I would have him as the 3rd best player over the class, over a guy like Barry Carroll at point guard. Because of that, even though the consensus would disagree with me, he has what I'm talking about. He has that high IQ. He has that ability to play make for that center spot, has the ability to be a two-way player, and those are the 3 things I'm looking for. Two-way players with high IQ, good athleticism, and good size, play make. I know that's a lot of things. There are a few players that I think check all those boxes, and Francis Mullins is one of those players. Scouts do not like his scoring ability, but consensus likes him a lot more. Again, a very common theme throughout this class. Don't know if we just have a bad scouting class or if the consensus is just all, I don't know. We'll have to see who was right more often, our scouts or the consensus on this. Might have to do some firing of some scouts. But a really good rebounder again, despite not being that 260-pound guy. Really good interior defender, not an elite, but really, really good. Has the IQ, has the playmaking, has decent athleticism, not a great athlete, has good size. He has 4 badges: blinders, break starter, fearless finisher, pogo stick. Also has Hakeem Olajuwon All-NBA upside. Absolutely a great player, and is on the short list along with Kelvin Fletcher. If we stay at 5 and 7, or even just if we keep one of those picks, which I think is very likely, on the short list for sure for those picks. Another center that I really, really like in this class is Bobby Hickman out of Gonzaga. Now, he is the old school paint beast guy, does all of his work on the interior, but dang, is he really, really good at it at Gonzaga. maybe the best rebounding prospect we've seen in the draft in the last 3 years since we've become a franchise. Darren Anthony was very good as well, but man, oh man, if Hickman isn't maybe just a little bit better. Doesn't do as much of the other things well as we see from guys like Darren Anthony or some of the other top center prospects. He's a little bit raw. That's the reason why. He has only been playing basketball for about 3 years. He had a growth spurt his senior year of high school. Before that, he was a football player playing defensive end, and because of that, he has a very physical style of basketball. Loves to, throw some elbows in the post and get guys there. Gonna miss some shots for sure, but has a ton of upside because of his size and strength. All he really needs is to learn maybe a little bit more of the techniques of basketball that come with just the years of experience playing it, but already a force to be reckoned with. And I think he'd even be worthy of the 7th spot, but there's a chance you could trade down a little bit and get him. And so he'd be very much so on the short list with a trade down, where Francis Mullins maybe gets picked at 3 or 4 or something like that. Would love a guy like Bobby Hickman, just A+ inside defense, A+ rebounding, good inside the arc scorer. Doesn't have the IQ, again, not an IQ player, decent athlete as well, but he has 2 badges, has all NBA upside, exceptional low post defender, strong vertical leap, knack for steals, not a good decision maker, and doesn't have the quickest reflexes though. So a little bit more of a project than Mullins, but I think has very similar upside, and so gonna go a little bit later in the class, but I think still an awesome center pick. Courtney Peters here is another guy that's a good center. Not quite the upside here, but 7 foot, 270 pounds, 2 badges, A+ athlete. This is the athlete of the class for sure. Is a bit older. I think the reason he stayed in college is because he doesn't have much of a refined game, but awesome athlete with incredible size. Jayshawn Mayo, another guy. He's kind of got the, stretch big that can also play interior defense. That's a skill set I always love. So if we don't end up taking a center early in this class and we trade down, I think Jayshawn Mayo is somebody that we could absolutely be looking at. Has a little bit more upside as well. And there you have it. That is our final draft preview. I think there are plenty of guys to be excited about in this class. We didn't even go over all the good point guards in this class, just kind of the ones that I personally like the most. There's a guy here with 5 badges. It's an insane class. If we just go through like potential here, look at all these guys with B+ or higher potential at one position in this class. It is insane. And I'm very, very excited for this class. Very excited to see whether or not we end up trading up. I'm really honestly 50-50 on it right now, and want to hear your thoughts about it. But in terms of this episode, that is all I've got for it. We'll be back soon with the draft. We'll finally get the answer as to who from this class ends up being members of the Nashville Sound. That episode will be coming out soon, and until then, sound up.